write the name in here, in the box.
You just put a check mark.
Oh, check mark, got it, and then sign it at the bottom.
I think we're ready to begin. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. I'll call to order the January meeting of the St. Augustine Beach Commission. Happy New Year again. Let's begin. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order is swearing in new commissioners.
Right. I've not done this before, so do I go to them?
Yes, well, you have them
Come up.
they come up, and they raise their hand,
Mm-hmm.
and swear.
All right.
The photo opportunities here for family.
Okay, good. Vanessa, can you come on up? Sure. All right, we're going to execute the oath here of office. You can read this, or I guess repeat after me. I, Ernesto Torres,
I, Ernesto Torres,
do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution
do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution
and government of the United States and the state of Florida
and government of the United States and the state of Florida
against all enemies, domestic and foreign,
against all enemies, domestic and foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
that I will bear true faith,
loyalty, and allegiance
loyalty, and allegiance
to the
to
same,
the same,
and that I am entitled to hold office under the Constitution,
and that I am entitled to hold office under the Constitution,
that I will faithfully perform the duties
that I will faithfully perform the duties
of Commissioner of the City of St. Augustine Beach,
of Commissioner of St. Augustine Beach,
on which I am about to enter.
on which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And so, go ahead and sign.
Congratulations, Mr. Torres.
All right, and Mr. Rumrow, will you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Dylan Rumrow,
I, Dylan Rumrell,
do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution,
that I solemnly swear to support,
protect,
and defend the Constitution
and the government of the United
and the
States
government of the United States
and the state of Florida
and the state of Florida
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
domestic and foreign,
domestic and foreign,
and that I will bear the true faith,
that I would bear the true faith,
loyalty, and allegiance
loyal and allegiance
to the same.
to the same.
And I am entitled to hold office under the Constitution,
And I'm entitled to hold office under the Constitution,
that I will faithfully perform the duties of Commissioner
that I'll faithfully perform the duties of Commissioner
of the City of St. Augustine Beach,
of the city of St. Augustine Beach,
on which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right. Your signature.
Beverly, I think we need a roll call now.
Yes.
Next.
Okay. Commissioner English,
Here?
Commissioner George,
Here.
Commissioner Romo,
Here.
Commissioner Samora,
Here.
Commissioner Torres.
Here.
Max, I think you're up on guiding us on the appointment of mayor and vice mayor.
Yes, Commissioners, remember, it doesn't require a second. You can, of course, nominate yourself. Beverly has provided forms for you to fill out in case we have, more than one candidate for each position. You can propose one of yourselves or one of your other fellow members to be, doesn't require a second. And then once you take position of the mayor first, and then the vice mayor after that. So, open it up to nominations or self-nominations.
I'll nominate our last year's mayor, Margaret England.
Thank you. I accept the nomination humbly and gratefully.
Are there any other nominations?
So do we need to have vote on this, or, because there could be someone else written in?
No, there can't be any written in because there are only 5 commissioners, and one of them has to be mayor. So you can't write somebody else in like me.
Okay, so
So you're in.
if, any, last chance, any other nominations someone else would like to serve?
Going, gone?
Thank you all so much. I thank you so much for the nomination and this, with dubious and to the job again, but I will do my best to serve you and the city. Thank you.
Okay, then the next is any nominations or self-nominations for vice mayor.
I'd like to
I'd like to
nominate
nominate
Commissioner Samara.
Yep. Jinx. I think you've been nominated twice.
Thank you both for those nominations, and I accept that nomination.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none? It's unanimous.
And as you accept, congratulations.
And one of your responsibilities is you have to move over here,
Yep.
and Commissioner George has to move over there.
That's
Because
the
you run the time clock.
hardest part. That's keeping time, that's the hardest part.
Watch that clock.
I think I have approval of minutes next. Okay, all right. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from our December meeting. Could I have a motion to, well, first of all, is there any changes? Anybody note any changes or typos or anything in the minutes? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the December meeting.
Make that motion to approve those minutes, Mayor.
Second?
A second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that minutes are approved. Next item is additions or deletions to the agenda for tonight.
I have no additions or deletions.
Okay, all right. Any other commissioner, any changes? Hearing none, the agenda is approved.
Mayor, there is a change to the order of topics that's on the next page that I want to suggest,
Oh, okay. Changes to the current topics, okay.
and that is the item number 10, no, not number 10, the item with Mr. Tredick concerning
That's number 11. the
number 11, yes.
Ocean
number 11.
Walk?
Yes, I would like to move that up under old business, because there may be people here who want to talk about it.
So make that 8A.
Yes.
Okay, any other changes to the order of topics?
None for me.
Okay. Anyone else? Changes to the order? Okay. Then presentations. This is a presentation to Chief Hardwick. My pleasure to make this presentation. Chief, this is my pleasure to present this plaque to you for your years of service in St. Augustine Beach. You have done so much for our agency, and we are so proud of you on your new job and wish you the best and a happy new year to you and your family. And thank you again so much for your service here in St. Augustine Beach. But don't forget us. Remember, we are your home.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that. Thank you. I just wanted to thank the commission for always supporting us at the St. Augustine Beach Police Department. And again, just a great ride here for 8 years, truly blessed and thankful. And it was time to move on, as you know. Chiefs of police don't stay very long, so I stayed 2 years too long. But with that being said, thank you for your support. Looking forward to working with you on the county side of the house. We have a great relationship with your chief, Chief Carswell. And again, thank you for, I'm truly humbled to be your chief for 8 years here. And I truly appreciate it on behalf of my wife, Kendall, and I. So thank you very much, and God bless. Thank you.
And we have a second presentation tonight to Mr. Ernesto Torres. So if you'll step up here, Mr. Torres. This will be a double pleasure to thank you for your service on our code enforcement and to welcome you to the commission. This is really an honor. So thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was an honor and a pleasure. Thank you. I leave this
Continuing our meeting, public comment. If anyone in this room would like to step up, public comment is 3 minutes. Comment on agenda items is 2 minutes. And I wish everyone a Happy New Year, and please come up if you have comments for us for the new year.
Good evening, Commissioners, and Happy New Year. My name is Dr. Michelle S. Pavlovsky. I reside at 109 Kings Quarry Lane in St. Augustine Beach, Florida, 32080. I'm here to support the proposal that was made by Merrill Hawk at your December 7th meeting to establish a citizen committee to reduce theft at the beach by making public lockers available at the beach. I do not know what follow-up has been made by the city yet at this point, but I did write to, and I did include a copy of my email to the mayor and one of the other commissioners supporting this concept to Henry Dean, our District 5 commissioner. And it's important for him to be involved so that he can help coordinate any county response working on this committee with the city. So I thoroughly support this proposal as Ms. Merrill Hawk had made before you on December 7, 2020, and I hope that there will be a cooperative relationship between the city and the county to implement this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Max, do we have any update on that suggestion? I know that it has to go to the county.
We looked into it, providing the lockers are on our own at the Pier Park area. The Public Works Director's opinion, and I agree with it, is that metal lockers in that environment simply won't survive. I did contact the County Parks and Recreation Director about putting them in the Visitor Information Center. And I've not heard back from him about that, but I'll remind him.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to step up, please?
Tom Reynolds, 50 Brigantine Court. Number one, I don't ever recall appointing a mayor and a vice mayor without taking public comment. I got to tell you, I'm going to go back and look. I think it's important that you take public comment on appointing a mayor and a vice mayor. I think when you go back and look, you didn't do it right. There was no vote. Should have been a vote. Second, it's okay where it ended up. But also, I hope you change all the committees. Because I think the TDC, not that anybody's done anything wrong, but I think Samora should be on that one. He owns a restaurant. He's in the front lines. This Tourist Development Council is in charge of a lot of money. I think we need somebody who really understands advertisement for businesses. But tonight, I want this commission to realize something. The most important thing, from my point of view, that this city needs to correct is the waste disposal subsidy. When I looked at the state legislators and I see the city's begging for $700,000, I want to throw up. The city has spent millions subsidizing the waste disposal. You know, I'm not going to just stand by and be silent while the condo owners continue to be ripped off. They pay into the general fund. You want to keep the waste disposal service, have the people that use it pay for it, not subsidize it. I got to contact Travis Hudson, Cindy Stevenson, and Paul Wiener. I have to explain to them that people in Sea Colony are getting their trash subsidized while the condo owners get cheated. It's not going to stop, folks. It's the #1 priority. Parks that aren't fixed up, why aren't they fixed up? Because the waste disposal has been subsidized. I hope the commissioners realize that thou shalt not steal has not changed. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbors. That has not changed. It's 2021. Anybody seeking higher office, always remember, this will follow you, because I'll follow you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Anyone else would like to step up, public comment?
Madam Mayor, if I may, I don't know that there were any requests for, to speak delivered, just as to the comments about prior years selecting the mayor and the vice mayor. In those years when there was public comment, people had submitted those requests to speak forms. I didn't see any pass across the dais, so I just wanted to kind of point that out. It looks like our recording clerk is indicating that there were no requests to speak on that item.
But good point, though.
Yeah.
Good point made. Mr. Reynolds, thank you.
Yes.
Max, I see you're here. Next item is,
Just to remind the commissioners under your comments that you can discuss your assignments, as Mr. Reynolds alleged or intimated.
okay.
You know, who do you want on VCB, or whoever among you want to be on that
Would-
board or TDC, or,
Would you take us through the agencies or the organizations where,
well, there's the VCB, the TDC, the Intergovernmental Committee, though I don't know if that is even meeting any longer. And I know Vice Mayor Koska was on an Economic Development Committee, to the best of my recollection. But I think the two main ones are the VCB and the TDC. Sometimes one of you has been a representative from our city to the South Beaches Area Chamber of Commerce, but I don't know that that's happened in recent years.
and the North Florida TPO?
Yes, and sometimes we've had a representative on the Northeast Florida League of Cities, though that organization is not meeting until this pandemic abates. So really, the two key ones are the TDC and the VCB. And if any of you can think of another group that should be included or needs your representation, now would be the time to consider it.
Well, I've made a note that there are possibly 5, VCB, TDC, Chamber, North Florida TPO, and the Northeast Florida League of Cities. And so if, I know Commissioner George, you have served on the VCB in the past?
I've served on the VCB, I've served on the EDC, which is also really the chamber, and the TDC, and the Beaches, Shore, and Preservation. So I've served on just most of them.
Beach preservation?
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to continue that one?
Sure.
And you've served for what, 2 years on VCB?
No, I have not served on the VCB in a while. I'm currently serving on the Tourist Development Council. The Tourist Development Council is the one that oversees the receipt of the tourist development tax and makes recommendations to the county commission. The Visitors Convention Bureau is really the organization that oversees the advertisement. The member on the VCB is not a voting member. The member on the TDC is.
Okay.
I think Commissioner Samara
Yes,
has something to
I've
add.
been on the VCB this year. And prior to that was the chamber liaison.
Okay. Vice Mayor Samora, is there a preference? Is there a commission you would like to serve on?
The VCB is great. What's the typical, is it typically the mayor serves on TDC? Is it?
And prior to my being mayor, prior to my being vice mayor, really, I guess it had traditionally been the mayor who served on the TDC. And then our mayor wasn't going, so I got appointed when I was vice mayor, and then I'm just kind of still there.
I'm fine with VCB or TDC. I think the VCB kind of lends itself to leading into a TDC representation because you see what happens with some of the money that the TDC is allocating. But either one of those is fine for me.
Okay, so I have deferred to other commissioners who own businesses because I do not. And that has not been my background. And so I still will defer to commissioners that have business background that, and seniority. So, okay.
But for the record, just because of the public comment, the only reason why I'll bring this up, restaurants do not collect tourist development tax. As it turns out, I happen to own and have a license for an establishment that does collect tourist development tax. And I also own a business that advertises, but, I have no, need to continue serving other than my experience and, willingness to serve on the TDC. If our vice mayor would like a shot, I don't have any problem passing it off. But I would just...
Fine either way.
Okay. I would say that the way it works, we probably have to have me continue at least for a month or two until the county approves your appointment. Maybe that can be expedited this month if it gets on the county agenda. I'm a little fuzzy on those procedural details.
So what I'm hearing from the discussion is, Vice Mayor Samora, you will take over the TDC?
I can do that.
Okay.
That'd be fine.
And then Commissioner George, do you want to flip over to the VCB or another agency?
Let's see what everybody else wants to do. I
Okay.
can continue on the Beaches, Shore, and Preservation.
Okay.
That's not really, the TDC is very time consumptive. I believe the VCB is probably second in terms of how much time consuming it is. Mayor, you'd have to fill me in on the TPO. So, I don't have a problem taking a lighter role this year and see what everybody else wants to do. I don't mind doubling up is what I'm saying, given that the Beaches, Shore, and Preservation, they hold conferences, and I've attended maybe only, 1 or 2 a year, so it's not that intense. So I could double up, but I'd rather have everyone else take their first
Right,
pick.
right. And if there is an agency that you think of, so Commissioner Rumwell, what intrigues you? What piques your interest where you would like to serve?
Anything is fine. I'm currently doing the chamber, but they're doing all virtual meetings at this point. VCB would be fine, TDC, anything. I mean, I'm open to participating and helping out St. Augustine Beach.
Do you have a preference?
I have no preference. Whatever I can do to help.
Okay, Commissioner Torres, is there, do you have a,
Yeah, I appreciate the dialogue and the opportunity to input. I do have a preference. I do have some interest in the TDC. I've attended one meeting last month or so. I understand the desire to have someone that owns a business there, but I'm also interested in the opportunity to watch and for somehow protect some of the revenues that the city of St. Augustine Beach is entitled to. I did look at the commissioner handbook, and it lists a few of the committees that our commissioners are assigned. I don't know if we've discussed the County Economic Development Council.
Yes, we did mention.
Okay, and then there's the County-wide Intergovernmental Committee.
Yes.
But I will be happy to serve in any one that you see fit.
okay, based on seniority, if Commissioner Rumwell, well, you know, Vice Mayor, you have decided to take on the TDC, right? Okay, and so then, if you cannot attend, or if and it's a voting, but if you cannot attend, then perhaps,
No, you can't have an alternate mayor, just
Okay.
FYI, because it has to be an appointee by the county
Okay.
commission,
all right,
so that no one else can cast the vote.
okay. So TDC is going to our vice mayor.
Fine.
Okay, and then VCB to Commissioner Rumwell,
Sure.
okay?
Currently, the VCB is meeting monthly. It's virtual or in person, and the meetings are a couple hours. It's a pretty healthy agenda there. It's a non-voting position on that one.
Commissioner George, would you be willing to take on as you are, the beach, because you've got a lot of expertise there, and the Economic Development Council?
Sure.
And then the chamber, Commissioner Torres, the chamber?
So the EDC and the chamber are pretty much the same,
Okay,
just FYI. I think the intergovernmental committee hasn't yet been appointed. I mean, you know, I'll
okay.
Happy to
How-
do the
How
EDC
about
chamber.
that, Commissioner Torres, that one?
Okay.
I will continue with the North Florida TPO. Sometimes I will glean something from that one. And then the North Florida League of Cities, anyone want to,
I'll take that.
okay, Commissioner Torres? Okay, so I think we have them all. Max, is there anything we forgot? Anyone not clear on what committee they have?
I'm clear, but just to kind of clarify the handoff here, I'm going to plan on attending this month's, wait a second, we may not have a meeting until February. If it is I'll verify that. If we are meeting in January, then I'm going to plan to attend, unless I hear otherwise from Max, okay, that the county has acted on a swap out, okay? Because we have some new members and, you know, appointments and things like that to be making, and I don't want us to be.
I want to make sure we have representation there, so yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, I think we've discussed it before, the temperature right now in the TDC is not to expand the use of funds for infrastructure, which is the only way we could get more money. But, you know, I mean, we've all been staunch advocates on that, and I know you'll do a great job trying to, you know, really, it's a matter of timing. With COVID and all that, probably won't happen this year, but maybe the next year, so. Awesome, great. Glad you're on board.
Just so the commissioners know, one thing that Max and I have talked to the county, specifically Hunter, our goal is to at least get on their agenda or list a date, even though it may be in the future, of moving the fire station to a different property. We really just want to, even a tiny step and so we will be working on that, hounding them to at least put it on the list so we can move forward on that. And we may have further discussions, but not necessary at the commission yet, because nothing is ironclad. We don't even have a date when they might move the fire station. And also to work on, and we all will be working really hard this year. We have workshops being discussed later, but drainage and stormwater and our vulnerability study. So y'all have worked so hard in the past, there's going to be some hard work this year. So thank you all. Okay, so we've got that done. And so we can go to other commissioner comments. I'll start with our new vice mayor.
Honestly, you did a great job, you along with Mayor, along with our communications director, getting the Light Up the Beaches message out there, and the events had tremendous feedback from visitors to the city, as well as some of the retailers out there. So they had, one in particular told me they had their highest sales day ever on the first art walk that we did, and then their new highest sales day ever was the second art walk we did. So, and similar feedback from other retailers out there. So great job. It really took off this year. I think let's use that, build the momentum for next year, and keep it going, get more folks involved. That was great. Other than that, just hope everybody had a great holiday, and looks like everybody stayed healthy, so that's good. Let's have a great new year.
Commissioner George.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to, extend again a Happy New Year and a warm welcome to our newest commissioner. And just glad to be here. I'll keep my comments brief for the agenda. Thank you.
Commissioner Rumwell.
Yes, thank you. Happy New Year to everybody, and glad to be here. And thank you again to the residents of St. Augustine Beach for allowing me to serve another 4 years. So I appreciate that. Two things. I'll start with the most important. I've been in dialogue with Commissioner Henry Dean about vaccinations and what's going on at the county. I think at some point, Mayor, through you or Max, to discuss potentially using City Hall maybe as a drive-through or some place here on the island for vaccinations once we get to that point. I think they're going to need it, and I think they're going to want it. So that might be an opportunity for Max and for you, Mayor, to reach out to the appropriate people. I did have that conversation with Henry, though. And so that, sooner than later, I think they will have that conversation with us. Also, I talked to a nice lady named Mary Hansen, who is part of the Blue Star Memorial. And what that is, it's a memorial to armed forces, and they've asked if we would be interested in placing a plaque or a larger plaque marker maybe at our Veterans Park. There's a cost to it, but I think between the 5 of us, we could probably help raise money to get it. It's not an expensive piece, and I think it would be a great opportunity to, again, honor our veterans in Florida. So I will hand this to Beverly and then decide on what to do with that, but I think there's a good opportunity for that. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. I will follow up, and Max and I will follow up with, I was just reading on the emergency that they really haven't started some of the 65-plus vaccinations yet. And I think they're still trying to get our healthcare workers and nursing homes finished. I'm not sure, but definitely I know there's so many people interested in the fact Hope is so close. So I will follow up, but please do not hesitate to, any of us, follow up on, for our residents, what, we would like a site here in town, I'm sure. So everybody pitch in on that one. Commissioner Torres.
Thank you, Mayor England, and my many thanks as well to the residents of St. Augustine Beach who placed their trust in me and voted for me and put me here tonight. Truly thankful for that opportunity. Also, I'm thankful for the staff that allowed time during the, mostly during the Christmas season, to take a few hours of their time to give me a tour and also a good brief as to their staff and their issues and challenges. I really do appreciate that. With that, I also wanted, and I understand that being new, and I don't come with a long list of things, but I have observed and been part of the meeting through virtual, watching it at the comfort of my living room. But I do like to see if there's any feel for the commissions to perhaps consider changing the meeting time instead of meeting at 6 p.m. I know that many municipalities now meet during the day. I know that our county meets during the day, and there's other cities as well that do that. And I don't know if there's a reason why we have a 6 p.m. meeting, but certainly if we met during the day, we would also be able to use the current resources of the city staff that's available, that they're here during the day. They don't have to work after hours, and then come in early the very next morning, or even if we have a continuation meeting, sometimes it puts a strain on staff. So I just want to put that for the commission to discuss or for thoughts.
I will defer to the other commissioners who work to comment on your suggestion. So the other commissioners, please.
I know many of these committees that we spoke about a few minutes ago, they all meet during the day. So perhaps if commissioners can attend these committees, making a commission meeting that during the day as well may not be too much. I don't know. I'll put it out there for you guys.
I'd want to hear from staff, because it would cut into staff time, productivity time. Whoever wants to speak in on it. And maybe this is a topic, I don't know if we need a separate agenda item for that. I know in the past we've had a lot of outroar from citizens who feel like when we have meetings that we start in the middle of the day or on a weekend, they don't want to attend because it cuts into their working hours. So it feels like, from some people, it feels like it's reducing their access to government, which doesn't really make sense if we have it on the weekend, because you think that'd make everybody more accessible, but you can't please everybody. It's just one of those kind of situations. So.
Well, the staff is here no matter what during the day, Monday through Friday.
Right, I imagine you have other duties as
Yes,
attend.
true, but we adjust. We work around those as need be. Since I've been here, and even before, going back and looking at the minutes back to 1960, I don't think the commission ever met during the day that I can recall. We used to meet at 7 o'clock in the evening. And then the meetings, of course, went on and on and on. So the commission decided to meet at 6 o'clock. Well, then the meetings went on and on and on. So no matter when you meet, the time is going to be filled one way or the other. It really depends on the mayor as a practicing attorney. Commissioner Samora owns a business and has his own career to think of. Commissioner Rumwell has his activities. I think the mayor and Commissioner Torres are the really only two true retirees that we have that I know of, which is unusual. Back in the old days, most of the commissioners were retirees, so they could have met any time during the day or night. But in terms of the staff, we'll meet whatever time you people set.
Okay, Commissioner Torres, I think we need to set this as an agenda item, but let's take a look at what is going to be some of our high priorities this year. That vulnerability plan and study, it is going to impact our residents. So I'm also sensitive to, once things are back to normal, opening things, making sure our residents can hear the meetings. So that's a consideration, but we can consider it as an agenda item if going forward.
Okay.
At some point.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that's all.
All right. Commissioners, thank you again for the trust in me to act as your mayor. I want to thank you all for the previous year, your dedication, diligence. The preparation you had for the meetings allowed us to get through some very complicated items. We rolled through things pretty well, and always with respect for one another and with transparency. So thank you, and a thank you to the staff too. So I'm looking forward to 2021 and some of the hard work we have ahead of us, especially on the drainage problems. I want to call to your attention the minutes in your book of the November Planning and Zoning meeting, and there was one variance request that had a lot of discussion aside from the variance request about drainage, and especially drainage in the alleyways that have been vacated. And also, there was another variance request I bring your attention to. So we need to kind of take a look at what P&Z is doing and be sensitive to these variance requests and our setbacks and what we need to do going forward. If we have gone back and forth on setbacks, and a lot of it is dependent upon, things have changed on our drainage, and whether we rolled back the setbacks at one point and then drainage issues came up, and now so now they're granting variances on it. So I just want to call your attention to that issue, which is a legal issue. So, all right, having said that, any other commissioner comments, if you thought of anything else? Okay, we'll move forward to our public hearings. Number one, the request to vacate the alley on between 13th and 14th. And this is an alley that goes nowhere, right? It's
Yes, ma'am. The alley between 13th and 14th Street is landlocked on the western side. It abuts two other addresses, so it just stops. It also goes to the boulevard. The eastern side is through the beachside dining parking lot. There are several utility poles that provide transformers, so FPL was contacted. If the commission decides to allow this, they're going to require, or they've asked that we provide 3 utility easements signed directly to them. A copy is in your books for review. At this point, there's no reason to have them sign them and record it if it's not going to come to pass. As you see, we've contacted several agencies. There was a 1-month delay in this because we couldn't get a hold of FPL promptly to get a field engineer out there. No one department has any objection to this. The Planning and Zoning Board voted 7-0, but they want the condition that the preservation of the functionality of the drainage and utility easement be unimpeded in the vacated alley. I would like to point out that this is not a drainage easement. This was addressed at the Planning and Zoning Board. If the technology changes and the Public Works can use it as a drainage easement, that's great. But as of now, it's an alley that's being vacated. It's not platted as a drainage easement. So that's just for facts. Other than that, there was one resident that did not sign out of the majority, so they've met the requirement. So like I said, the Building and Zoning Department has no objection. I don't know if there's any specific questions. If there are any drainage issues, the Public Works Director can address those as he's responsible for drainage. But keep in mind, we do not allow permanent construction in the vacated alley. It can be used for their lot coverage, calculations, ISR, but they're not allowed to build in it. There's times where the city allows a wooden fence. That is, usually if they call us, we go through the Public Works Director, but a wooden fence is not permanent. So.
any questions?
I have a question. Mr. Law, are you aware of other vacated alleys where the drainage had been, the functionality of it had been impeded in any way?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And then I would extend your comment earlier as a question to our city attorney. If it's not platted as a drainage easement to begin with, is that even a valid restriction one could have on the vacating?
Since we're vacating it, we can put whatever restrictions we want on it, so it
Sure.
would be valid.
My recommendation is to provide a blanket utility easement for the city to do as it sees fit, and some legal, the attorney could draft that. But technology may change in 20 years. The important thing is not to allow permanent construction such as pools,
Right.
masonry fences, anything of that magnitude. So who knows, I mean, technology, who knows what we could come up with. But keep in mind, if we ever tried to present a real drainage issue in there, I mean, we're ripping apart the beachside dining asphalt parking lot to get it out to the boulevard. It's going to be almost impossible. I mean, nothing's impossible. We put a man on the moon. But, so it's not a drainage easement. And this went on for great debate at the Planning and Zoning Board.
Gotcha. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
I have a question to piggyback on those thoughts. What would be, if we make it a utility easement, can we make it a utility easement and a drainage easement? Are there different restrictions associated with one and not the other?
I feel that you can do anything you want as it's your property and you're granting the use back to the residents. But the big thing is, I'd be concerned with making it tailored to one specific thing, like you're mentioning. I would just say a blanket easement, in the city's behalf or something like that, and like I said, the attorneys can help. But like I said, we don't know what's going to happen in 20 years. Technology could improve dramatically in something. It's an unmaintained alley. It's no access without removing the fence at Beachside Diner, which I believe is required for their conditional use permit.
Any other questions? Any public comment?
We do have public comment. Ms. Sonia Kulik?
Commissioners, Happy New Year. So I think some of the confusion, I'm sorry, Sonia Kulik, 114 13th Street. So I think some of the confusion might be with the term drainage. I'll just read what I have prepared. So I'm here tonight to respectfully request that the permission not be granted to vacate the easement between 13th and 14th Street for the following reasons. Since the lot behind us at 111 14th Street was filled and graded in November 2016 without proper permits, and the new home was built at 115 14th Street, we have experienced more severe flooding in our backyard. We are particularly concerned about flooding issues now that both of these properties have installed in-ground swimming pools within the last several weeks, which brings their total ISR coverage to 49.8 and 49% just at the allowable 50% in our medium density area. The 15-foot easement, approximately 3,500 square feet, that remains between our properties is the low spot and serves to absorb water through seepage into the soil and tree roots during heavy rain events. In Mr. Tredick's recommendation to the board, he states that he has no objection to the vacation, provided that an appropriate drainage and utility easement concurrently dedicated in perpetuity to the city. We asked Mr. Tredick for clarification, and he said that they would require, the city will require drainage and utility easement, the same 15-foot width as the current right-of-way. Owners are not allowed to place structures. Okay, so based on the fact that monitoring the way in which each property owner chooses to use their 7.5 feet does not seem enforceable, it would put the onus on the neighboring properties to peek over the fence to make sure that neighbors are complying, which does not make for good neighbor relations. Based on the unique and specific recommendations outlined by Mr. Tredick, we request that the alley remain at this time and not be vacated. So that was the confusion between, it's specifically not drainage, it's more somewhere for the water to go. I mean, month after month after month, we keep on hearing about flooding and where does the water go, and everything's paved over, so it's not going to solve all the beach's problems, but if it can just keep the water away a little bit, 3,500 feet is really not nothing for the water to seep into the ground and be absorbed by the tree roots. And that was basically all I had to say on that matter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to get your minutes for
Mr. Tredick, do you have any comments on this, especially with
The trees that are actually in there.
vacating our alleys? I know that the residents are not supposed to put, that we have an easement, we have retained an easement on all these alleys we vacated. I've always been a bit nervous about vacating alleys, but this one doesn't seem to have an ingress or egress currently. But I am sensitive to the drainage issues, especially I remember 10th Street and some other alleys where residents have complained about drainage. And so, does Public Works, I'm sure you have a list of areas that are subject to flooding and maybe some of these alleyways, and how does this fit in with our vulnerability study with going forward? How do we address these issues if there is a problem?
I think this is not something the vulnerability study is going to look at that closely. It's more focused on sea level rise, storm surge, and our vulnerabilities to those circumstances. So this is back in the neighborhood. The houses directly to the west don't have a right-of-way. It's only a couple of lots, plus the diner on the boulevard that have the alley. I'm not aware of any drainage problems there that are different from drainage problems in other backyards around the city. That's not to say that doesn't happen. Backyards can flood and the water percolates in over time. I'm not aware of any property damage, any house flooding in that particular area. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but I'm not aware of that. I think it's important that there's a drainage element to the easement. If nothing else, just to protect the neighbors from each other. And the city will have to be somewhat of the referee, being the easement holder. But that would allow, that would protect them from a neighbor filling their lot 2 feet in the back and blocking drainage or shedding the water onto the adjacent property. So by having that easement, the person that spoke is right, it is going to be a little bit of, we may not know it's happening until someone tells us it's happening, but that happens back there right now too. It's an unopened public right-of-way or alleyway, and we don't go back there, we don't maintain it. It's a no man's land right now. So I don't really see the circumstances much different than what we have right now. As long as we have the ability to guarantee that the drainage is not impeded, and that one neighbor can't dump all their water on another neighbor, and that's what the easement would do.
Okay.
And it does add more square footage back onto the tax rolls, is another thing.
Okay.
Up to mind.
And I think the
Yes.
flooding in yards is pretty much in general over the whole city. Recently, the past year, we experienced sea level rise and water saturation and flooding. So it's not just confined to one specific area. We're all going to have to think about what we do. That's going to be. So any other further public comment?
No further public comment cards here.
Any further questions for staff?
I do. For the city attorney, would it be advisable to have some specific language specifically addressing drainage or, moving of the earth so as to deviate the flow of water, or would you advise that we just have a basic municipal use easement?
I would advise the municipal use easement. I don't think anything else is required further. Anything they do would be damaging our easement. So any specific requirements is probably too much in the weeds and actually worse. It's better if we have a more generic, the utility easement itself, if they start putting structures back in there or raise the level, would cause problems even with that. So let's.
But would we have a proof issue of showing that it caused an issue if they, put 2 feet of fill? I mean, I don't know that anybody would, or why they would, or if that would even cause an issue on the drainage, quite frankly. Would that make any difference?
I mean, it could cause an issue on the drainage if they filled to their new property line. So it absolutely could. That's why I want to preserve the drainage patterns. I agree with that. And maybe it could be put in words like that, that the existing drainage patterns shall be preserved.
Yeah.
Without I agree, getting into the weeds when you start.
Right.
banning certain things, and if you
Right.
miss something,
Right,
then you're almost
yeah.
permitting it because you didn't ban it. So
Right. That's,
And I will remind the commissioners that there's civil lawsuits between the different neighbors. If someone were to increase their height and cause
Sure.
flooding to their other neighbors, there's also civil remedies between the
course.
neighbors. And that's how that would traditionally be handled. So I appreciate the commission's desire to police and make for good neighborhoods, but normally those things would be handled at a civil level between the two neighbors.
All right, so commissioners, what is your thoughts on this motion?
I do like the language that Major Commissioner Ondine just spoke about regarding the drain pattern to be preserved. So I would definitely highly encourage that kind of language to be included.
So you're suggesting, in addition to a general utility easement, including but not limited to drainage? Something like that?
Something along the lines that it preserves the drain pattern as it is currently exists.
If I may?
Yes.
I would say exactly what you said and exactly what he said, including but not limited to preserving the natural drainage functions of the adjacent properties.
Okay.
And just leave it at that.
All right, well then, no further discussion. I'll make a motion to approve vacating the alley at lots, let's see, on the west side of A1A Beach Boulevard between 13th and 14th Street, preserving a general utility easement to the city of St. Augustine Beach, including but not limited to drainage property rights.
point of clarification, Mayor. You said reserving a utility easement. Is it a utility easement or a municipal use and utility easement?
That would be correct.
Okay,
So we'll change the motion.
okay. So adding the language municipal use and, okay. I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None being the motion passes. Second item, extension of current conditional use at the donut shop, Island Donuts.
Yes, ma'am. The initial conditional use permit was granted for 2 years. It is coming up on its deadline. Last month, I went to the Planning and Zoning Board. They recommended approval for 5-year term, non-transferable. At this time, we have 0 code enforcement complaints against this business.
Any questions of Mr. Law? Public comment?
There's no public comment.
All right. Then any further discussion among commissioners?
Mr. Law, I have a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Ondine.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I had the occasion of my husband bringing home some of their donuts just the other day, and I have to say they're quite decadent.
Mr. Law, and the request is to do it for 10 years, correct? Unless the building is sold or something, different ownership?
The Building and Zoning Department presented either lifetime of ownership or 10 years.
Okay.
The Planning and Zoning Board recommends 5 years and non-transferable to the commission.
Okay, non-transferable. Okay. Now, if the donut shop were to do something out of it, but the same entity, this would also protect them to do that as well?
To clarify, are you asking if they decided to sell pizzas?
Correct.
You don't have the right to, this conditional use is for outdoor dining, not the sale of donuts.
Perfect. I'm okay with a 10-year. Mr. Law, I think you and I have spoken, and there's really, it costs us money every time they come to us and ask for a conditional use permit.
Yes, sir. Conditional use is $400 plus the cost of the sign and stand. It takes 2 board meetings to attend with the legal advertising and city staff time to do the minutes.
So we're losing money each conditional use permit?
I would probably say yes, the legal advertising is twice.
Right.
And then, like I said, staff time to generate the minutes. staff time to prepare the case. That was part of my ongoing to bring the planning and zoning budget to start covering its operational costs.
Okay, I'm okay with the 10-year, because, and I wish we could look at this moving forward as kind of a precedent for certain businesses. I know that we've had this come in front of us with the school, which I believe is now leaving the city potentially.
There are whispers that they will be annexing out of the...
Because of stuff, so I would like to try to not lose places, but continue to be business friendly. So I'm in favor of a 10-year permit for the donut shop.
And before you continue, Madam Mayor, if I may, just as a history, with Coneheads Ice Cream was granted, I believe, longer than 5, and also Aquaterra was granted the life of their recently signed contract, which I believe was approximately around 11 years.
Oh, okay, I see planning and zoning granted with the non-transferable for a period of 5 years.
Yes, ma'am, that was the vote from the planning
Okay,
and zoning, it
all
was
right.
unanimous. So whatever you feel comfortable as a commission.
Thoughts from other commissioners on the time period?
I know in the past, I've been really, an advocate for allowing it to come back so we can reconsider, but I have reflected on that, and I do think we need to, be supportive of our businesses, as long as it's, still not transferable, and, we don't grant these unless we've gone through scrutiny to begin with. So, especially where there is history of good, use and cooperation with the neighborhoods and surrounding uses, I do think it's worthwhile to consider a longer term. I would be in support of extending the term to 10 years, deviating from my prior precedent.
Okay, so maybe for renewals, like this one, period of 10 years, but maybe some of the initial, we might consider a shorter period.
Yeah, I think that's wise.
All right. Anyone would like to offer a motion?
I'll make a motion to extend the current conditional use permit for outside serving consumption of food and beverages at Island Donuts at 400 A1A Beach Boulevard for 10 years.
And granted as non-transferable?
Correct.
Okay, all right, I'll second your motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. And Mr. Law, ordinance 20-14, final reading.
Yes, ma'am, this is amendment to land development regulations regarding recreational standards out of section 4. This is to bring the land development code in line with the comprehensive plan. You've seen this several times, there have been no changes to it.
Any questions? Public comment?
No public comment.
Any further discussion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve. I think we need the title read.
Yes, we do need the preamble read. Our attorney?
I don't know if the ordinance numbering would change on it.
Beverly, will the ordinance number change?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Started in 2020.
Yeah, so it's 21, probably 01.
That's what I mean.
You'll keep the same number, 2014.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the clarification.
Ordinance number 2014, an ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, making findings of fact, amending the city's land development regulations, section 4.01.06, recreation, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an immediate effective date.
Second.
So we have a motion, a second, and the ordinance preamble read. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Mr. Law? No, this is this?
Yes, ma'am. Ordinance 20-15, the first public hearing, second reading to amend the land development regulations regarding occupancy permits, impervious surface coverage, unsafe buildings, number of code enforcement board members. This is an attempt to correct the code board from our occupancy of the city exceeding the threshold. We have to have 7 members. We do. You've seen this 2 months before. Planning and Zoning Board saw it last month and recommended unanimously to approve it. There's been no changes since the last 2 months.
This is to eliminate the occupancy permits for short-term rental?
No, ma'am, your transient rental program will still remain in effect. There's a section in the code that's not only unenforceable, Ms. Miller can't even recall a time when it was done.
Okay.
All those
Any
codes are
further
coming.
questions? Public comment?
There's no public comment on this item?
We have no public commenters, I don't think. Okay, so any further discussion? Motion?
I believe he needs
Have to read it.
Okay. Ordinance number 20-15, an ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, making findings of fact, amending the city's land development regulations, section 6.07.10, 6.01.02, 6.07.07, 11.03.02, 11.03.04, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an immediate effective date.
Make a motion as read.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Ordinance 2016.
Yes, ma'am, this is the final reading for the adoption of the Florida Building Code, Chapter 1. As we discussed last month, this is done every 3 years when the building code's updated. There's been no changes since last month.
Okay, you've all seen this one before. It's quite thick. And I noticed the language on, that you changed as amended from time to time, which is good.
Yes, ma'am, the state changes the laws on me every 3 years.
Right, and so, do we have any public comment on this one?
Comment on this item?
All right, any further discussion? Then, would you read the preamble to the ordinance?
Ordinance number 20-16, an ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, making findings of fact, adopting the Florida Model Building Code with minor changes to the city's code, repealing Article 1, Section 6-4, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an immediate effective date.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 20-16.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, this ordinance is passed. All right, now, we have the next item, appointment to a 3-year term of the Sustainability and Environmental Planning Advisory Committee.
There are 2 consent agenda items, the reappointment and the resolution to declare a surplus several items of the police department assets. You can do this by one motion and vote, the approval of each, or both rather. There have been no applicants on the CPAC, so these 3 individuals will wish to be reappointed to another 3-year term.
Does any commissioner have questions for our city manager on these items, or our finance manager? Any questions of staff on these 2 consent items? Anyone want to take them separately?
Are there any public comment for either?
No public comments.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Consent items are therefore approved. Okay, we are on to old business, ordinance 21-01.
Yes, ma'am, this is the first reading to amend the land development regulations to allow mobile food sales in the city. This is to bring us in line with the governor's bill. As you can see, there's several sections that had to come to pass to make this happen. First was prohibited uses, where it strictly prohibits mobile food vending. Instead of messing with what we had, we just put the exception in, made it simple. And you're going to see that on page 17 on numbers 4 and 5. All right, so I'm going to continue. On page 14 is a definition. That's put in Article 2 as we continue to move all the definitions there. That's referenced on your page 17. Then as we go into a new section that was modeled after the dogs in food places, it was a very good format I found, and it worked perfectly for this. The lawyer did do a lot of this. I do have several recommendations to the commission. One would be on page 18 under C1B. Mobile food dispensing vehicles may only operate in commercially zoned areas unless special permission is granted by the city manager. I would recommend except on commercially zoned properties containing a single-family residence. As we allow single families to be built in the commercial sector, I'd hate to see one of them put a food truck in their driveway and operate a secondary business. Even though I could prohibit it under the adjustment to parking, I'd rather have it in there outright. Then also, I recommend underneath H, create indigo, I, hours of operation to be between whatever the commission recommends. I'm okay with 0600 to 2000. That allows them to encapsulate the breakfast crowd and the dinner crowd. Then the vehicle should be moved off-site.
Are they the same hours as a restaurant?
Restaurants can operate in unique hours, but I believe Beachside Diner opens at, I think, 6 in the morning. But it can be whatever hours the commission feels comfortable with.
Just to make them consistent with restaurants, maybe?
I don't recall what the hours in the city code for restaurants. I know alcohol is regulated, but I don't think there is any. My big taco shop stays open till 2 in the morning, I believe, or something like that.
Okay, well,
But whatever you feel comfortable with. Unless you have no intent of telling the mobile food vending truck to go home at the end of the workday.
The
That's up
diner-
to you.
The diner is open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m.
7 to 3.
Just FYI, yeah.
Major England, that's something that I talked to Brian Law about. It's, these mobile trucks become permanent structures. And I'd like to see some provisions where they are moved daily and enforced through code enforcement.
Is that something we can do under state law?
I haven't looked that up. Don't know what the new law, whether that requires that kind of regulation or detail. It allows some level of local regulation, but I don't know if it allows that or not. I haven't checked.
I think we do have an ordinance that prohibits overnight parking of trucks. We have an ordinance on overnight parking.
I believe that would be on a public right-of-way. This would be on commercially zoned private property.
Right.
I think you would lose that in that technicality.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
On page 3 of your packet here, there is a highlighted section provided by the city manager. And this appears to be just a very good section. A municipality, county, or other local government entity may not prohibit mobile food dispensing vehicles from operating within the entirety of the entity's jurisdiction. Doesn't say resting place, it says operating.
True.
So that's a legal issue, but that's the way I look at codes.
Well, the issues that I thought of in section 3, the application, item 3C, the description of the days of the week and hours of operation, and including the location, so that whoever reviews the application can see where they intend to be located.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then the hours of operation, whether we should put restrictions there in the ordinance, and overnight parking, whether we should add a restriction on overnight parking or a period of not more than 48 hours, and then outdoor lighting. Those are the items that came to mind that I thought of that perhaps should be added to the ordinance.
Yes, ma'am. Outdoor lighting would be regulated under the Land Development Code currently. And keep in mind, just in case no one's thought of this isn't your ice cream truck driving down 16th Street and stopping. The way this ordinance is written is on commercially zoned property. The streets aren't zoned commercially, so keep that in mind. They will need an actual parcel ID, and that could easily be overlooked. So, so this isn't driving down 11th Street. A bunch of guys run out there, get a couple push-up pops and keep on trucking. So this is commercially zoned. It is subjected to the Land Development Code as far as code enforcement, lighting, and the big thing the lawyer did a great job on was not interfering site visibility for traffic or adjusting parking.
Well, that was my question, Mr. Law, Mayor, if I may. Back to Commissioner Torres's comment, does it change the longer we keep them there? Does that affect people's parking requirements? So if I were at the bathing suit shop, for example, and I had a truck parked there from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m., does that now, I've lost 2 spaces, maybe 3 spaces, how does that affect moving forward that problem for potentially the business owner?
And that was my next comment I was going to bring up, as our parking code in Chapter 6 doesn't address this because it was never allowed. So the commission would have to decide, ideally, the intent of this, I would assume, would be walk-up traffic a lot. But there are going to be vehicles. You see them over there by McDonald's inside the county jurisdiction across the street. I would hate to see a business, let's say, that's been grandfathered for 30 or 40 years, doesn't comply with the new parking code already, not be allowed. This would be an application fee where it would be reviewed, but my staff, or whatever staff, I guess would be zoning staff, would handle it. To be clear, this would not be a building department operations, as what we do is in the title, building. This is not a building. It has wheels.
The way this was written, I thought it would, you cannot take away from the minimum parking requirements, but it didn't add to parking requirements.
Right, well, keep in mind, you have lots of businesses in the city that don't comply with the parking code already. And if you recall the 3 years I've said, just because we strengthened the code today doesn't mean that they should be punished from 10 years ago. Parking was a big thing. A perfect example was the Embassy Suites with the 1.15 per room and then the assembly areas. So you can't go back in time, but Savage Swimwear is a perfect example, or the one on A18 Beach Boulevard right there.
Oh, yeah.
That's been there forever. If we run the parking, we would be limited. I think you would exempt most of the places. And keep in mind, they would have their own business tax receipt. We would have to, there's a lot of work for staff to issue these business tax receipts. We have to apparently verify insurance. And there's many state agencies that get in the middle of this, and the lawyer's better suited to handle that.
Well, that was a question I had because, I feel like we're kind of pigeonholed with this because you want the business owners, if they can make additional revenue, because I'm certain they're going to lease out that spot. If I were the bathing suit store and Commissioner George had a sandwich truck, I'm going to charge rent. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I'm going to charge something. So I'm conflicted. I mean, I know we have to do something, but I think we got to make sure that we're not going to impede the businesses, but it's impeding them 2 ways: financially in a rent side, and then if it messes up their parking requirements. So I want to get something clear cut from the attorney that will allow these places to be grandfathered in via parking. I'm not worried about the parking of people coming for the food truck. I'm worried about the spaces designated for the swimsuit shop or something like that.
Right, and don't forget, if some of your businesses have let their handicap parking spot go away, it happens.
Right.
The stripes don't get repainted, all of a sudden a sign falls over in a windstorm. It always happens. We need to make sure that that's taken care of, and by saying, maybe in the ordinance, if the lawyer would agree that a handicap parking spot must be present, that's a great way to get the building department, who doesn't have the authority to go back on the property once a building is done, unless there's a serious issue, hey, guess what we're doing? You want this? Where's your handicap parking spot? So we just did a loop around and got back into the game. And it could help even one person, and it's a success in my book.
Well, preserving the handicap parking is a really good idea, assuming that most businesses operate to their own self-interest. Maybe we can start with the assumption that a business that all of a sudden would, if their own customers, if there's a parking problem in their own self-interest, they're not going to allow the food truck to be there.
Exactly.
And that may be what Adam Smith's economic principles or something. They're going to act in their own self-interest in allowing a food truck on their property, commercial property or not.
One option is to let it ride like it is, and then we know we're going to change this. in a year. We know it. So let's just see how it goes, as long as the lawyer protects the city's interests, and we'll just assess it then. Maybe we don't need to regulate it like the mayor's saying.
All right, so that's something to think of, because this is the first draft, and then we're going to get an opportunity to look at it again. Any further thoughts on what we might want to add or change?
I think that was a good catch on the single family and the commercial designation.
I have a few.
Okay, good.
So, Mr. Law, first, with the permitting that's required, I thought that was preempted by the state. So when I read what came down from the state, it says that, let's see, I'm trying to, I had it highlighted. Okay, if you look at what's labeled as, I guess, page 3 in the state ordinance that came to us, it's line 2302, 2303. Municipality, county, or other local government entity may not require a separate license, registration, or permit other than the license required under statute 509.241.
That I'm going to defer to the city attorney as he prepared that part.
In my review of it, we're not allowed to make extra burdens, so the permit, this is the minimum process that is allowed by the state law, is the simple way to say it. So.
Pretty explicit when it says may not require a separate license, registration, or permit.
And basically, it's the equivalent of the city saying, if you're going to do this business in our city, you have to let us know you're doing it and go through the registration of it. And so that type of narrow permit is allowed.
Now, let's see if we can stop calling it a permit.
Right.
So it's an application fee with a business tax receipt issued by the city clerk and her staff.
Right.
Okay.
So it's not a permit, it's not,
Yeah.
the building department is not involved in this. I'm here on behalf of zoning. I just turned the hat the other way. So that's all it is. Now, if the city wants to waive the application fee and just do the business tax receipt, that's definitely within your purview.
Well, we can set the rate for the BTR, right, as a different amount. Since it's a new BTR, can we create the rate at the outset?
As,
But I don't know if we can add to the BTRs as present. That's up to the attorney.
I believe, and if I may, I believe Ms. Dariana informed me that there's already a business tax, like a category.
For the mobile,
Right, and I'm not an expert in the business tax receipts because I don't dabble in them, but I
I
did,
haven't looked at it, so.
that's something we can look at, definitely. But if it's already existing, I think we would be landlocked or limited with what we could do.
With that, yes, until we bring it up and increase all of them.
I
So-
wonder if that's the one that's limited to farmers markets.
That could be, because there are allowed, the farmer's market or a city event.
Right.
So they are allowed that way. But I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
So by next month, what we'll provide is, we'll have the city clerk maybe give us a little guidance on the proper procedure for that, and we would ask that the city commission decide whether or not to implement the $50 application fee that the attorney wrote into the ordinance.
I think we need our time compensated.
Yeah,
I
for
agree.
your information, the $50 fee is the maximum we're allowed to charge. I remember doing that when I
okay.
drafted it.
So as long as we're not duplicating a state license or health code, food code, anything like that, we can charge to process.
Correct, yeah, we can't have any obligations or anything else, or make any extra things for them to do in order to get that.
Right.
We have to, but that's, we're allowed to process it, we're allowed to know they're here,
Okay.
and basically keep track of all the other licenses that they have to have.
Okay.
So that's where they would be providing us with the health department, the Department of Agriculture, there's a bunch of them that they have to do. They have to stay regulated with the fire marshal. So.
But I would also say the $50, if you take any staff member, this will most likely fall on, probably I don't know, we'll have to discuss that, but it's very possible it could fall on Dariana. Paperwork, we'll use a traditional BTR application to simplify operations. And I can tell you, it's going to take about an hour for each one of these new ones. By the time you add a staff's pay with retirement and medical, you're right back up to $50. So somebody can generate profit. Keep in mind, these are for-profit businesses.
Okay, I think this is,
I did have.
Commissioner, okay.
That was only my first item.
okay, all right, very good.
One of the items, thankfully, has already been brought up. Commissioner Torres brought up something to the effect of having to move them. I mean, the way I wrote it down was cannot remain stationary for more than 24 hours, something like that. Let's make them mobile if they're going to be a mobile vendor. Thoughts about limiting one per location or one per zoned commercial lot?
You may do, there's a little code in the book that, and keep in mind, we don't have any bars. We have restaurants in this city. But there is an old code that talks about it being so many lineal feet away from another bar. You could potentially institute not more than one food truck in a 300-foot radius.
I think we do have some language in what was proposed, and I said, I believe it was 300 feet, not within operating, I read that somewhere.
I believe where it talks about the same kind of food.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know it was in some of the information that was provided from other cities that were dealing with it, and I'm not sure if that made it into.
Yeah, it's C1 sub G is, I believe, what you're talking about. The type of food offered for sale by the mobile food dispersing vehicle shall not be identical to any existing restaurant within 300 feet. So we could
I would
mirror that or.
strengthen that by generalizing it a little bit. The term identical to an existing is
Impossible.
pretty specific. I mean, that's pretty easy to get around, so I would just go with more of the not operating within maybe 500 feet of an existing restaurant or food vendor. So it's almost like first come,
Right, that was-
first guy on the lot gets it.
My next point, and it piggybacks off yours, is a restaurant, do you want to allow a food truck in a restaurant, which would be prohibited by your rule? So keep in mind, you could have a restaurant that's operating, without this rule, you could have two restaurants in the same parking lot, essentially.
I have a question for that. Yeah, I'm okay with the same restaurant as long as it's the same entity. So let's use the Beach Diner. If they wanted to put a mobile food truck in their own parking lot, they should be able to do that. So say for a art walk type situation, if they wanted, because they close at 3 o'clock, but say they wanted to open something that evening, they should have a right to put their own food in their parking lot if they're competing with other food trucks as well. That's just a thought.
That's a great idea, and it's if we continue with our smaller events, that can become very prudent. We have no objection to that in this building and zoning.
What about bathrooms?
The attorney is put in there that each location must be able to provide access to a restroom.
I didn't see that.
It is actually C1F. It's on the top of page 19.
Oh,
This is very open-ended.
thank you.
And this is something we need to discuss on how you want us to proceed. The building code's not going to intervene with the requirements for bathrooms. I've researched this, and it's pretty much a no-go, because it's not a building. I would love to see bathrooms everywhere. Do you want to provide a lineal foot, because you do have multiple city bathrooms? Or do they have an agreement to use another building? And then we're getting into seeing people, how they're operating their business, which I'd rather not be involved in, especially when it comes to monetary compensation. So to provide access to a restroom, there's a restroom over there at the pier, and you're at F Street. Good luck.
Well, I think that's going to change based on the operation hours too, because now if you're there till 10 o'clock, if you're the swimsuit shop, not to just keep saying them, but are you going to give somebody a key? So, or do you have to operate on their hours? So depending on the hours of that business that you're at, I mean, is that a way to say, hey, you're allowed to operate, if you're at the swimsuit shop, they're open from 6 a.m. till 4 p.m., or is that the hours that you have to operate at?
Or are the restrooms at A Street close enough,
Correct.
you know?
All right, and that's the question for the commission. Do we put a lineal distance on it? Or if they have an agreement with the restaurant, but once again, everything we put in our system becomes public record. I try very hard not to put businesses' financial records in our software.
No, I agree with that too.
Lots of Sharpie in.
Brian and I discussed it, and I kept it in more for conversation, and so that we talk about it rather than it being an actual recommendation.
Now, hear this. I actually had this discussion 5 or 6 years ago when I was with St. Johns County. It was enough where they never came back to me on it. So are we going to allow picnic tables there? So let's say you just walk up, you get your sausage burrito, and you leave. What's really the difference? But if you start allowing picnic tables, now they're buying food, they're consuming it on site. That's what you would have to think about. Is the intent of a mobile food, we're not making a food truck park, we're essentially we don't have a lot of real estate in the commercial zone. I mean, F Street's viable, but it's kind of down the line a little bit. We have the properties south of the Marriott, but who knows what they're going to develop on those. So.
That's a good point.
And keep in mind,
That's a good
handicap
point.
parking is required to be paved.
You think about the property south of the Marriott, that's commercial zoning, but there's no facilities around there.
Nope.
Tons of room. You could park 3, 4, 5 food trucks over there if you wanted to.
Right, and that's why we probably should clarify a distance to a bathroom if you want to do it, or you just let it be. Like I said, the building code is not going to answer this question. I just can't even go there. I have done research on this before. So it's going to be up to whatever you want.
There's a food truck place north of the city.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they doing, or what did the county provide for that access to restrooms?
I believe, I've never been there, but I believe they're using that building to the side. So, like I said, if you want an agreement, we can make that part of the bathroom, but we would still need feet from the city bathroom. And I don't know, the hours of operation would have to coincide when the bathrooms are open. So that would be a public works question on, I'm not sure what time they lock their bathrooms or not.
Yeah. And this, we don't have to allow, this will not allow picnic tables or any on-site consumption. It's essentially strictly a to-go type.
You would need to put that in there, and I don't know, the city attorney might have to research that a little bit.
I think it's got to be a to-go. I mean, it's a food truck. I mean, that would be my.
I don't have that answer. That's going to be a legal question.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
think there's any-
if we think about some of our commercial spaces, like Beachside Diner or other places where there is an existing business that allows this, the restrooms and that is going to be covered, I think, in a way. But when we start talking about a big lot like south of the Marriott, that we've got to really think through what could happen there. A big parcel.
Okay, maybe we could do something very simply as saying, only one food truck is permitted per parcel ID with the exception of a conditional use permit. Then we write it in there where we allowed it. We can allow it by conditional use in excess of one food, whatever, the mobile food dispensing vehicle. That way, if it's over one, so we don't end up with a food truck city, it's coming back in front of the commission. And if you want to allow it to, that's up to you. Keep in mind, traditionally parcels or individual lots, but the Marriott, south of Marriott, is probably one parcel minus the 6 western lots. Those were just assigned individual parcel ID numbers because it was all part of the hotel. And just to be clear, there's been no interest to put food trucks south of the Marriott at this point.
But I think they don't have power on that property either, so I think that'd be another thing they would have to put power in and all that kind of stuff.
Generators.
Yeah.
The trucks usually have their own
Generators.
generators. so they're-
Yeah.
Part of the definition, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And keep in mind, there won't be a lot of enforcement from the, there's not much I can do. The higher state agencies have this. The fire marshal does reserve the right to inspect anyone under, I believe they have codes in the NFPA. Building code has nothing. So the building official will not be showing up to inspect these. Even though in the code it says the chief building official and or the fire marshal, that they're subjected to inspections, you got nobody else. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. We're out of players. So there has to be somebody. And I would be there more as a zoning capacity. But that'll be picked up in the BTR application. If there's a complaint, it could go to, if they're exceeding the hours and the police or, we're not working past 5. So if they're operating at 10 at night, we're going to know by complaints or the police will see something.
So as it's written right now, if somebody makes an application, who would be reviewing that requirement of whether they've provided access to a restroom?
Zoning.
The board?
No, ma'am, the zoning department.
Right.
Bonnie Miller.
Right, Okay, so, I mean, our city attorney mentioned this has kind of been here as a discussion point, so we need to provide more clarity there
Or remove it.
or remove it.
Let them handle their own. And if they have, like Mr. Romwell said, if they have a interlocal agreement between the business owner and they're probably going to let them use their bathroom, and they're going to just, I mean, I would. I'd charge them, make separate money. But, yeah, I mean, you could just remove it and simplify, and we can see how it goes. And if it becomes a huge issue, you said, we're going to be back at this again in a year, I can promise you that. We're going to be fine-tuning, and there may be more changes coming from Tallahassee. So you can remove it, simplify operations, and see how it goes, like the impeding parking in existing buildings or something.
Mr. Tredick, what time do the bathrooms close?
Bathrooms are typically locked by the police department. What time?
Between 9 and about 10 o'clock, depending on their calls for service.
When do they open?
Our Public Works opens them in the morning. Typically, they clean them when they first get in there, at 7:30-ish. By 8,
7 to 9.
certainly by 8 o'clock.
So potentially, we could alter the hours that the commission has to declare to coincide with that.
Well, I think we're going to have a bathroom or a linear feet type measurement. I think we got to coincide with what we're doing.
Right, definitely. Like I said, I would definitely default to the attorney if we're going to put a lineal, if we're not going to allow picnic benches, to see exactly what that law says. Because it's almost unenforceable.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to drive by and see a fold-out chair.
I know, and that people could bring their own.
I've got buildings being built without permits that we're working on. You know, we're out of staff.
Yeah.
After hearing some of the discussion, my suggestion, the way I would look at this is one per parcel instead of a lineal foot type of thing. That eliminates people trying to get around it somehow. One per parcel with an on-site restroom. I mean, I don't know how this, I mean, I'm not sure how Public Works feels about having a mobile food vendor right next to the public. I mean, it just adds burden to the city for.
I don't think I understand. You,
to take care
you
of
said with a restroom on site?
An on-site restroom. Look at this on a per parcel basis, a commercial parcel basis, and you limit the number of mobile food vendors to one per parcel, and they must have access to an on-site restroom while open, while operating. So if it goes on the site of an existing business that wants to operate it, they can work out, as you said, you can work out.
And we can get a copy of their agreement.
Right.
And I'll encourage them not to put anything with a money symbol on there, because I don't want to know.
But if it's on a vacant lot, then why should they have access to the city restroom when everyone else has to provide their own for their customers?
I'm okay with that.
Well, I think that too, and to follow up with Vice Mayor some more, I think I don't want them cleaning out their food stuff inside of our restrooms either. So, it might be a lot easier to I think trash, I think there's a lot more we can look at too, not just to continue this all night, but I think, trash consumption. Is that now part of the commercial for trash pickup, or does the food vendor take it, or is that up to the responsibility of the place that they're spending or, sharing the space?
That's a great question. I believe the business tax receipt application has a provision in there for trash that it says how you're going to dispose of it.
Right.
And so we can look at it at that level. And if they say throw it at the city trash can on A Street, we're going to be like, we're not doing that.
Right. I just think,
It's
thinking
built into
outside
the
the
app-
water.
Yes, sir. It's built into the application. I think staff can easily handle that.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And if the commission wants, we can also have the Public Works Director sign the business tax receipt, because I believe currently it's,
The garbage, when pickup, they have to tell us how much garbage cans, and they have to also be a part of the city pickup. So, if it's not, I don't know.
if we get them to say they're taking it with them, then, they can write that on there. Trash to be removed at end of business each day.
If they're mobile, there's no way that we can put them on city.
No, but there is a page in the business tax receipt that addresses garbage pickup, so we can pick it up in there.
Pick up themselves.
And we can just have them write it on there.
Can I chime in here real quick? For the solid waste, you actually have to provide us with a contract if you are removing it or having someone else remove it. So they're going to be pretty hard pressed if they're a mobile food truck to have a contract that someone's going to come and pick up their trash at their mobile food truck location in the city.
I would expect that they were going to take it with them. Now, I don't know any of the health department rules with them picking up their trash can and putting it into their kitchen.
Right.
I have no idea about that. I have no intentions of dabbling in their industry. But definitely the city's not going to be picking up their trash.
And really, from what Patty just said as well, they're not gonna be able to have somebody pick it up.
And can I just jump in again? With respect to if you're looking at making the mobile food truck be on a parcel, one per parcel, and they have to have access to a restroom. So I'm going to just pick Beachside Diner as an example. And so they have a mobile food truck in there. They're allowing them to have access to their restrooms. Then within their agreement, if they have such, between the mobile food truck vendor and Beachside, they could also have language in there that they also have access to their trash services. So then the trash has to be put in Beachside Diner's dumpster or wherever it may be. They have to have something saying that their landlord, per se, is providing their trash removal services. And then once we validate that, that takes care of the trash services for them.
That's a great point. This is very easily accomplished by city staff at the BTR process, just simply by having them tell us what they're doing. If we're going to have a contract, as Mr. Samora said, if they're going to use the on-site facility, it'll be included in there. This should be very simple for staff to say, hey, where's your trash going?
And I think lastly, for the attorney, if we start telling people about restrooms, do we have to comply with ADA?
ADA at this point, I'm going to interject if I may.
Go ahead.
At this point is handled by the business owners.
Okay,
The building department is not permitting a food truck.
okay. I just want to make sure that
It's
we're not,
handled in civil court. They file a complaint, they have so many days to comply, and it goes on and on and on.
I just want to make sure if we say it's got to be 1,000 feet, that we're not burdening somebody in the ADA side of things, that they can't get to it, or if it's on a non-gravel piece of, I mean, I just want to make sure.
If there's any fallback on that, it won't be on the city.
Be on the owner.
The individual business.
Okay, that's all I want to make
From
sure.
an ADA compliance, yeah.
Just want to make sure.
City's never liable for ADA unless it's on their own property.
So Commissioner Samora, have you got, we address everything in your list?
Yes, I was just going to add that as far as the disposing of trash and stuff like that, the stuff that was provided in our backup material from like the city of Venice, they address it in there, so you may want to take a look and see how they've done it.
It sounds like we are assuming that the mobile food truck will be associated with a commercial piece of property where there is perhaps an existing business so that it can piggyback on trash and restrooms. I think what I'm hearing y'all say, though, is that we don't want a big piece of commercial property with nothing on it become a food truck park. Is that what I'm hearing from all of you? So,
If we're allowed to do that.
Right, yeah, I don't know legally.
And what I would kind of suggest, because Brian had brought it up earlier, is that maybe we put an exception to the law in, or to the ordinance in for conditional use permits, so that if down the road we want to permit a specific property to kind of be like the property on the north where 3 or 4
Okay.
trucks could be there, they can kind of join together and have a bathroom. If we want to conditionally permit that for that parcel, then we can do that and make it an exception to this rule,
okay,
this ordinance. But otherwise, I think it's a good protection the way you guys are drafting.
okay.
I'd want to see some real clear criteria for reviewing such an application, so that we would actually have some legal enforcement to fall back on if we decided, or whatever future commission decided to reject such an application. A lot of our conditional use, procedures, the way they're written, just says we have the right to review, but it really doesn't bolster our authority to reject. And, we've been caught in that double bind before.
Yes, ma'am, that should be simple for the attorney just to create 1 through 10. You
Right.
must conform to these standards.
Conditional use and special events, too. I know that for special events, we allow gathering of food trucks. So, all right.
I think that's would fall under a different section, right, with what we already have.
Special events, its own permitting.
I do have one more question. As to the one per parcel suggestion, how would that be considered for a property like the Marriott where it's a PUD? Is that one parcel?
You mean to the south of Marriott or to the north?
No, the Marriott itself, or Castillo Real. They have a huge commercial, they have extensive lots of additional parking. So would that mean they could only have one truck per that hotel, or would
If written the way proposed, yes, that would stop that. But once again, if they want to have multiple, the conditional use permit application could become an excellent source to get back to the commission to weigh the individual group.
Well, wouldn't that be separate parcels, each of those separate parking?
Not the hotels, those are linked under one parcel ID, so they get one
Ah,
tax bill and so
okay.
on and so on. Now, keep in mind, those south of the Marriott will be broken up, just like the north was when that conditional use came through last year, whenever it was. Now, the lots are platted. They just consolidate, and once development starts, we communicate with the county, and it's very simple how they do it. You know, you can set a clock by how they're going to do it. But it just becomes that because we have individual buildings. Massive commercial buildings will lump them all together, or else they're going to get 10 tax bills.
Okay, do we have enough discussion for a second draft?
We do have some public comment.
All right.
Mr. Tom Reynolds?
I got a lot of notes.
Tom Reynolds, 50 Brigantine Court. Commissioners, become the most unfriendly food truck place in the world. It's a kick in the teeth to brick and mortar to bring them in. We're a 2 square mile city. I've had a lot of contact with employees in restaurants. They work very hard. I even had contact with owners. They work very hard. I see the law, but I want you to remember something. There's a good fight. You know, sometimes I think to myself, maybe it's this city that needs to take the state on and say, hey, wait a minute, you're putting this burden on us. You know, we're a beach town, we respect all the restaurants here. And, you know, the whole bathroom issue. I mean, really, are they gonna be able to say a public restroom is qualifying them to put their food truck? And remember, when you passed the rules for Beachside Diner, you limited the time Beachside Diner could be open. Remember, you didn't allow them to be open at night. If you go back and look, there's something on there. But also, too, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, how could the VCB be for this? How could our TDC be for this? How could any local restaurant association be for this? How could any, if there was an employee association, be for this? I'd be tough. I'd make those rules so hard. When people would look at the application, they would curse the city of St. Augustine Beach. I wouldn't make it easy for them. These brick and mortar people worked hard. They pay a lot more. I like Brennan. That's his own property. He does his own thing there. That's the way it should be. Please make it tough. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion on this item? All right. All right, then let's see what else have we got here.
Go to 11?
New business, well, we've got, yes, number 11, 8, which we made 8A, which is, Ocean Walk.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Bill Tredick, Public Works Director. On October 5th, 2020, the City Commission directed staff to advertise a request for qualifications to select a professional engineering consultant to assist the city with the Ocean Walk Drainage Project. RFQ 20-05 was advertised on November 10th, 2020, and submittals were due on December 8th, 2020. For the RFQ, the scoring of submittals was based on a matrix based on relevant project experience, the project approach, quality control and experience, proximity and familiarity with the project area, as well as qualifications in different engineering disciplines. There are 4 city staff on a selection committee, Each one independently reviewed and scored the submittals. The selection committee then met on December 22nd and present their individual scores where they were tabulated. There were 3 applications. Matthews Design Group scored the highest with a total of 1,510 points. Four Waters Engineering scored number 2 with 1,380 points. And Madrid Engineering Group scored 3rd with 1,325 points. So Matthews Design Group was the highest ranked qualified submittal. Per 287.055 of the Florida statutes, it's Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act. An agency negotiates a contract with the most qualified firm for professional services at compensation which the agency determines is fair, competitive, and reasonable. Should the agency be unable to reach an agreement in those negotiations, negotiations are formally terminated, and the agency then goes to the number 2 firm and attempts to negotiate. So that's the process we're in now, or we will be in soon. In order to begin those negotiations, we ask that the Commission approve the scores and the rankings of RFQ 20-05 and authorize the city manager or designee to negotiate with the top-ranked firm, and if necessary, lower-ranked firms if an agreement can't be reached with the top-ranked firm related to the Ocean Walk drainage improvements. Upon successful negotiation, a proposed contract will be brought back to the City Commission for review and approval. And happy to answer any questions.
Is the Matthews Design Group a local, or where are they located?
They are located in St. Augustine, so they're a local firm.
And what about the other 2?
I think they're Jacksonville, I believe, if memory serves. And I will point out that all 3 firms were very good firms. All the applications were solid. Matthews has a good bit of experience. 3 out of the 4 reviewers ranked them number 1. They've been in business, I think, 15 or 16 years now. They have a wide variety of experience in both public and private sector, so they're very qualified for this work. I'm pleased with the way it all shook out. And if we get your approval, we'll begin negotiations with them.
And this item was not in the 21 budget, and that's where we went to the county to ask them at the legislative committee there. We went to the county to ask for help on this item.
It is in our budget.
Oh, it is.
Under drainage, miscellaneous drainage improvements. I forget the exact amount, but there was enough money to do the phase 1 in the budget this year. We did go to the county to ask legislative assistance, and we're getting follow-up paperwork to the state for that. And if we get that, that would be hopefully for the whole project. So, but at this point, we can go forward with the, if we can reach an agreement, negotiate a contract, and you approve the contract, we can go forward with the preliminary, the survey we need to do, the geotechnical analysis, and the preliminary engineering at this point. And then, depending upon whether or not we get funding, we can either put that on the shelf and wait until we have funding, or you can go ahead and fund it next year in the budget. Or potentially, if funding comes sooner than that, we could even advance it, but that's something we'll know in a couple of months, or a few months anyway. Probably after the legislative, probably more than a few months, but.
Any further questions for Mr. Tredick? Public comment?
There is no public comment. I see some public comment coming. No. Thank you. Ms. Karen Kempler.
Karen Kempler, 30 Lee Drive. All I want to say tonight is I'd like to thank Mr. Tredick and the commissioners for their support of looking into our drainage problem, and we also are very pleased with the results of the bids, and we're also very happy that actually a St. Augustine company came out top in the bid, so that also makes us very pleased. So we'd like to thank you, and we look forward to the results of the drainage study. Thank you. Oh, my neighbors in the hallway want to thank you too.
Any further public comment? Mr. Reynolds?
I'm Reynolds, 50 Brigantine Court. You know, it does kind of seem strange when I'm hearing the money's in the budget, but you're down asking the county for the money. I didn't hear the words reimbursement when the mayor and Bill went down there. And, you know, to me, I'm thinking, when I just hear that, the money's in the budget, but you're down at the county asking for $700,000, and wouldn't it be better to be at the county asking the state legislators for money for other projects like the parks that have gone on and on and on unfixed up? I don't know, I'm confused at this $700,000. It kind of almost seems like unethical. That the money's in the budget, but you're down at the county asking the state legislators. I'm going to have Senator Hudson and Rena and Stevenson look at that, along with, of course, the millions that we've been wasted subsidizing the trash subsidy.
Mr. Reynolds, if you'll allow us to answer your questions. Mr. Tredick, could you be more precise on, we have only a part in the budget for this year, like Phase 1?
Right, right.
Correct. The money that's in our budget is only for the initial investigation. It's not for the design and permitting. It's essentially a preliminary design and engineering study, about a 15% design equivalent. It's nowhere near the full design, and it's certainly not the construction. So it's just the first step.
Right, and our request was not to the county itself, but we attended that legislative action meeting.
Correct.
To the state.
Correct. The request was to get it on legislative appropriation for the finished design and permitting and to do the construction of that project.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. All right, any further questions on this from
I have a question.
commissioners? Mr. Torres?
Thank you. In this process, I'm not very familiar with, so we've given, Mr. Tredick is asking to approve the ranking of the RFP results and start negotiation with the top firm. Is there if he reaches, what negotiation is it? I don't quite understand, or is there going to be a cap once the negotiation is reached to his comfort level? Is there an amount of expenditures that we're authorizing, or is it, what's the next step once you reach a successful negotiation with Matthews?
Good question. Mr. Tredick, can you address that?
So we'll sit down with Matthews Design Group. We'll go over the problem. We'll talk about an approach that we can agree on to develop a concept plan and a preliminary analysis. And then we'll start putting dollars to it. And we'll look at it, we'll develop a scope, and we'll try to put a price to it. And if we put together a price that seems reasonable for the work that we're going to get, we'll bring that to the commission to approve. The contract, it would probably be an overarching contract, that's how I envision it, that would allow us to subsequently move on to other tasks. The first task would be this initial study. So, because that's what, as I said before, is what's in the budget. But the contract will establish rates for various positions within the firm that we agree to pay for hours. As we look at a scope, they'll put hours to the tasks. If it makes sense, if it's reasonable, then we'll bring that to you to approve the contract and the first phase. If it's going to drag out for multiple years, they may want to put a clause in there that allows them to adjust the rates because of inflation, but that's common with engineering firms. If it's going to be only a year or two, we can probably not have to do that, but that's something that we'll try to negotiate with them. So that's what I mean by negotiate. We'll try to reach a fair accommodation of both their hourly rates and the scope that we're trying to develop. We won't establish a detailed scope for anything more than task 1 at this point, though, because we just don't know what those next tasks will be exactly.
Commissioner Torres, do you have, is that answer?
I'm
some of your-
comfortable with that.
All right.
Hey,
I'll stay here till I'm sure.
Make a motion, Mayor, that we approve the recommendation of the selection committee.
Second?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Being none, that, we've given guidance to the Public Works Department on this and approved their ranking. All right, I think we have changes to the personnel manual. Radis, please lead us through your changes. Thank you for doing this, keeping us up to date.
Yes, ma'am. The first resolution is regarding Section 2.4, 3.2, 4.1, and 4.2. Basically, it's being best practices in the previous manual. It did not tell you not to do a drug test or a background check or any of that before the actual offer was given. And that's the best practices at this point, is to do that. Also to make sure that the candidate signs and says that they're allowing that to take place. And basically, that's the main changes of that resolution. If anyone has any comments.
Yes, let's ask questions on, because she's got several
I got
changes. So
3.
let's ask questions regarding each section if we have any questions.
First resolution.
Yes, Resolution 21-01.
I was just curious how this impacts the commissioners
As far as
employees. Do we fall under any of these definitions?
No, the commissioners are actually appointed by the residents, so they're not considered to do any of that. We don't make them do any of that because they are appointed. So,
You're talking about conditions for employment.
yes.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm sorry, my question was a bad one. I guess the types of appointments, like there's a temporary and part-time, presumably there's already a full-time definition. I was curious whether any of those provide a categorization for the role of commissioner.
Well, we haven't really done that as of yet. If you want me to look into that, I can. We've never really defined what the commission is.
Right.
And I understand that.
I was just wondering if there were any unintended consequences essentially by these, any of these changes. And since it's coming up, I figure I'd pose the question.
No, I wouldn't think so. This is mainly talking about taking drug tests and when the actual background check and so forth is done for an employee, when they're first offered the position. So I wouldn't think that would have anything to do with the commission because the commission is appointed by the residents. And so, no, I wouldn't think so. I defer to the city attorney, but.
And I think I'm zeroing in on the same issue on item B, section 4, temporary, item B. Benefits for part-time employees shall be the same as stated in section 4-1B. And that's 30 hours or less than 30 hours. And we have been through a discussion on benefits for
Yes.
commissioners before.
Yes.
So I'd be very careful of the wording here, because we've been through that, we've resolved it, and.
The normal full-time now is 30 hours, according to the standards.
What do you mean normal?
According to the Department of Labor and so forth, 30 hours is what it starts for the full-time.
Full-time, and you can, and full-time employees are entitled to the benefits, whatever you
Correct.
offer everybody.
So if you have 30 hours or more, you are entitled to that. Now, your benefits, depending on, some people work 40, so like vacation and sick time would be prorated into that because you're not paying the full, you're not working the full amount, but it's still considered a full-time position. So you would get benefits. And that's something that maybe the commission wants to discuss, how many hours they normally put in order to get benefits.
We've been through
Yes.
the discussion on benefits, and I really don't want to open that up again right now.
Okay.
We have
No,
other things for part-time employees. And so I'm just, where it says benefits for part-time employees shall be the same as. And what does that refer back to? If you're less than 30 hours.
If you're less than 30 hours, it's a part-time employee. This is showing temporary, which means a seasonal employee. It's not somebody that stays on year-round. That was already in the personnel manual, so that's, I just changed a couple of words in that one. If you're talking about 4.1A temporary, is that what you're talking about?
I'm in on page 4.
Page 4, okay. B?
4.2, part-time.
Right, okay.
Benefits for part-time employees shall be the same as stated in section 4.1B. What is that?
I don't have it with me.
Okay.
I'd have to look. But that was what it was previously. The only thing I changed was from fringe benefits to benefits.
I just think, Beverly, we need to really hone in on, because we've already had a discussion of benefits for commissioners, and unless we're going to reopen that right now, I would think that that paragraph needs to be, make sure that that isn't inadvertently reopening that discussion for right now.
Okay.
Unless other.
Yeah, it sounds like, I was comfortable with her response, Mayor, if
Okay.
I may. Just because, she's right, she just changed from fringe benefits to benefits.
Okay.
Not to interrupt you, I did have another question. when you're
Okay.
done. So as to the change from 40 hours to 30 hours constituting full-time, how many employees have we had who are between 30 and 40 hours thus far?
One.
That was my thought. How long has that person been employed?
12 years.
And why have they been under 40 hours?
They don't want to work the 40 hours. So they've been part-time, under 40 hours, but the law has changed where now 40 hours is not full-time. They start now at 30 hours. That's just the way the law has changed over the years.
Can we get some reference to that, that it is standard? What is the county doing, for instance? Is it actually a law or is it a recommendation? That's where I'm a little fuzzy. I just wanted to.
I can get you that. That's not a problem. I can show you, it's in the Department of Labor.
And it's only one
And
employee.
SHRM and,
Not going to impact our budget all that much, but, it's a policy change, so.
it's been the same way for her for 12 years. We paid her benefits and so forth because she worked 30 hours, so,
I'm sorry, she has been receiving the same benefits anyway?
Well, she's always, I don't know what she did prior to me coming.
Okay.
However, at this point, this is the normal practice. If you want, like, some information regarding that, I'll be more than happy to send that.
Okay, wait, I just want a little clarification. So we're already giving this individual the same benefits as full-time?
No,
so-
she's prorated. She does get her medical insurance, but her sick and her vacation is prorated to the hours she works.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that's how we've been kind of doing a hybrid, so to
Yes.
say. So it'll be a really nominal impact on our budget then?
Correct.
Okay, all right, that gives me a lot greater level of comfort. Okay. All right, that's fine. No more questions at this moment. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay. On the second one is paternity leave. And on this one, I just made I changed it. It's still under it still follows all the ADA and FMLA guidelines and best practices. I just updated the information because it's just, you can't now say a man can't take off for having the birth of a child because he's a man. So the discrimination part of it, we did change. And this information is the best practice at this point. So, anyone can have any questions. It still follows under if somebody is critical, if there's an issue with the paternity, if anything happens, then they still are covered under the same way they were before. And it's the city isn't paying for it, it's up to the individual, take sick time or vacation time and so forth. So it's nothing that we're paying for as a city, but it is a non-discriminatory clause that we need to put in there.
That was my question, Beverly. Under Exhibit A, the particular one that you're talking about under paragraph B, the word is parental leave may be charged. So when, as a newcomer, I was reading this and I thought to myself, well, is there a situation where they're not charged?
When you're saying well, it depends on how you read it because you do get, we never pay out for this parental leave, okay? But we're trying to, they will pay for their sick time or vacation time, whatever it takes for them to have if their baby was, had a problem or they had a problem, or the wife, whatever. So that's the only change we're really making, and also that the man can also take off.
It's charged against your medical leave?
Correct.
Always?
Yes. It is not coming like a benefit to people that are having a baby. It's just, it's just more for not being, having a man can't take off because he's a man. I mean, it's best practice.
Good addition.
Any other questions on that one? Okay, the next one is the military leave. And there were several changes that we did. Now, we did talk about this before, and the word terminate seemed to bother a lot of people. I took that out. It didn't mean they were terminated from the position, but that they were terminated for their insurances and so forth until they came back, because they could be gone 5 years or more. So at any rate, we did rework it, and I did speak to the city attorney regarding this language, and so I did want to point out that the city does give 240 hours per law per year for training of the military, so when they leave, they can get that, and we do that for the military, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And if you all have any questions regarding anything, please let me know.
Looks good, too.
Thank you. And that's it, unless there's any more questions.
If there are no further questions of Beverly, do we have any public comment on
We have
these?
no public comment on this item.
All right.
You can make one vote, or for all three, or you can do it separately, whatever you prefer.
So we can do a motion to approve all three resolutions?
Yes, ma'am.
Then I will make a motion to approve resolution number 2102. Wait a minute, 2101, 2102, and 2103.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the resolutions, changes to the personnel manual are approved. Workshops.
Workshops. We provide in your agenda books 1, 2, 3, 4 general categories of workshops for February, March, April, and May. And under each month, we have suggested 3 or 4 topics for the month. Our suggestions from the finance director and myself are hardly cast in stone. You may mix and match, subtract and add. All we're providing to you here is a suggested list to see where you want to go with this. You may deem that in February you want to meet on some of the topics that I suggested for April or for March. So it's very open-ended as to what you want to do, in which topics you want to discuss and when you want to talk about them. I do want to point out, talked before about having a joint meeting with the planning board and CPAC. We're not really set up for a joint meeting with 20 people in this room because we don't have the space for distancing, and equally important, we don't have the microphones for people who are distant apart, where we're barely able to provide enough mics for the configuration that you see the room in here, and I don't have one, which is why I come up here, because the handheld mic you found in the past was not satisfactory.
What about for workshops, since we won't be voting on items, conducting those by Zoom as well as in person?
I don't know.
There's no legal issue with that.
Right.
That's
Uh-huh.
allowable.
Okay, that's a good point.
Okay.
So we might say to the planning board people and the others, sign up for Zoom and attend by Zoom.
That could give us some flexibility as to the time of day as well.
Sure, good idea.
The only problem is I think IT would have to bring each person in that wants to talk, and I don't know how that would work out.
Well,
But I'm not IT, so.
we'll talk with IT about it, see what's feasible.
Beverly, are you talking about members of the public?
No, I'm talking about like the planning board, and there's 7 of them, I believe. So they would have to, like, somebody wanted to comment, you would have to like let them in. So it'd be really difficult to keep a workshop kind of going, not
Well-
knowing who wants to speak next.
Well, I think there are techniques that can be used.
On Zoom. We were doing that with the commission meetings. It was a smaller scale, I understand the point. But, okay.
Nope, that's doable. So I'm here at your service and guidance. In February, do you want to have a workshop in February or 2? workshops, and which topics would you like in February?
Well, I think we can eliminate the discussion of the former city hall,
Okay,
because nothing going there until we can get at least the moving of the fire department on that one. So I'd take that off. Commissioners, what items are you, for February, what would you be interested in talking about? I think we need to talk about our strategic plan.
I agree that'd be a good place to start before you have a bunch of workshops. Let's solidify what our strategic plan is, our goals.
Are you suggesting putting the horse in front of the cart? Brilliant.
I agree with
Are we supposed
that.
to pick a date? Propose dates? Max, or are you going to propose dates to us at our February meeting?
I
Do you know what
can.
the calendar is?
I can, and this, one of you knows at this point that you're not going to be here at a certain,
What if
Dave?
we, if we're going to have a workshop that month, since we already kind of have a rule that if we don't get through our agenda items, we follow through on the next night? Would a workshop, would that be a way of handling workshops?
sure.
So we'd be looking at the second. The first Monday is February 1st. And so the potential, February 2nd.
For the workshop,
Max, you can provide us with the last strategic plan and any of those topics that were kind of tangential to that, prior plans, looking back maybe a couple of years, I don't know, use your discretion.
What would be the hour of the workshop?
Usually our follow-up meetings are what, 5:01, or do we go to 6?
Yeah.
5?
Yeah, 5. If we follow through anything, agenda items from the regular city meeting, we will normally go to 5 o'clock the next night.
so, but you're saying for this workshop, you're not going to, assume on the February 1st, you get all your items done.
Right.
So you'll still have a workshop the following day on whatever topics you've decided you want to discuss.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, at 5 o'clock,
5:01.
5:01. Okay, so we have one topic, strategic plan. Is there another topic you'd like to talk about at that workshop in February?
I think that's going to take a lot of time, and I think to Vice Mayor Samora's comment, I think until we have that, I don't think anything else matters.
Okay,
That's my opinion.
And the intent on that is just to go over the strategic plan? We're not adopting the strategic plan, because that would have to be at a public meeting?
yes, that would have to be a regular meeting.
But-
I did prepare a draft, so it's already done, but the commission really didn't dive into it to make changes and corrections or whatever they wished. So at this workshop, that's what you do, and then in March, you could adopt it.
Right, yeah, that was only going to be my point, is that we can essentially do all the work, and the only thing not do is the motion and vote, Commissioners, so then, we would be streamlining in the commission meeting. Max, do we have a heavy agenda in February?
Not particularly at this point, no. I think there are several public hearings, but nothing complicated. I say several, I think there are 3 or 4.
I mean, should we leave it to staff's discretion to, if the agenda looks very light, to just put it on the regular business meeting agenda? Or keep it separate?
I like the idea of putting it on the, if it looks light, at staff's discretion.
Right, because we're blowing over anyway.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, yeah,
Okay, so February 1st or 2nd.
yeah.
Well, we'll try to keep the agenda light.
Maybe should we, if there's hesitation to set further workshops, maybe we should roll the rest of these as an additional agenda item for February as well, so that if we do have time to get through the strategic plan, then we could set further priorities for the next workshops
Okay?
going forward.
Yes. As
Good
each
idea.
month rolls around, we'll ask you
That's a good idea.
to set a workshop.
Keep it streamlined, just keep
Yeah.
it going.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, and so if the strategic plan gets moved over to the second as a, that this agenda item could be following it.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, so I have my guidance.
Max, what was the item creating a land trust?
That was Commissioner George suggested that, as I recall, in conjunction with that Second Street, two individuals from Second Street who wanted us.
Those two lots?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
but I think you had something larger in scope in mind?
Well,
A citywide land trust, maybe?
I
Of course-
mean, no, it's not quite the same verbiage is all, but working with one of those nonprofits to accept the property into the trust. The North Florida Land Trust had indicated that they would have more of a willingness if there were more properties rather than just those 2 or 3 parcels. So they were inviting something of a larger scale to kind of buttress it. Like, for instance, perhaps that land north of Publix, which already has the public use reverter clause, or some other land, either that would be donated by private donation, but it was really more trying to facilitate a third party rather than us establishing.
Maybe call it like a property preservation
Program.
program or something.
More like a program, Okay. But I don't think I don't think it warrants us having a separate workshop. It really would require more of guidance from that third party.
And maybe under that, Max, we can see if they allow parks to fall under that as well for public parks, under that property preservation program, just to see if we can utilize some of that for open space public parks.
Because the idea is that if there's a preservation easement that's owned by a third-party nonprofit, well, first of all, the donors get a better tax benefit, so it becomes more compelling to encourage donations. But also, it has greater stability toward conservation, because there's always a possibility that a future commission could change a land use map designation of a land as parks and convert it over to, commercial or something, or they could take park lands and sell it. So even though a current commission may say we would never do that, future commission may change that. So that's where the third-party easement for conservation really achieves more of that goal.
So we have a way of addressing our work, and we're going to do it month to month,
Yes.
okay?
Yep.
All right. So,
We will have definitely in May or June, a review of capital projects for FY '22, because that affects the budget. And the stormwater utility fee, I clearly remember you wanting that to be discussed in April or May. because that could affect the budget as well.
I think a couple of these, Max, could be agenda items like solid waste outsourcing and recycling. That
Yes.
probably could be an agenda item. Stormwater utility fee could probably be an agenda item. Succession planning could probably be an agenda item. I think those are probably some, just looking at it off the top of my head, that I think we could tackle throughout the year this year as an agenda item.
Okay?
Okay, anything else?
But there were additional considerations that Max had listed. It was whether or not we wanted to have a meeting with the county, so I don't know if we want to try to discuss that now.
It's that difficult because of, I mean, my mind, well, first of all, it's always been difficult, but now with COVID too, it's just, I don't know.
It is difficult.
Maybe Flagler Auditorium or somebody will let us do something there.
I don't know whether they're equipped for the recording system that we need for our public meetings.
But let's look into that, because Max and I did discuss that, Flagler, the
Yeah.
auditorium, to see. But I'm hoping that by May, we might all have our vaccinations. So that goes. All right,
And Mayor, we did have public comment on this.
okay.
And while the speaker comes up, I think it's a good idea, Vice
Mr.
Mayor, just
Tom
to
Reynolds.
work on on our list of topics, right, that we would want to discuss with the county. We can all.
Right, right.
Tom Reynolds, 50 Brigantine Court. Workshop is pretty much speaks for itself. You're going to work on something. I think that the most important thing, I'm going to say it again, I know you're going to get tired of hearing it, but it's the waste disposal. I did hear Dylan bring it up, go and privatize. It's where the biggest savings for the city is. And if the city decides, the residents show up here, you have it on both sides. What it costs if we have a private contractor versus what the city, they need to pay their way, because it really does cheat people. Also, I think you need a workshop for commissioner pay and benefits. Now, Margaret did not want to touch on benefits for commissioners tonight during the other subject, okay, because it was heated. But I want to tell you something. Really, I think the job needs to pay a lot more. It needs to attract somebody. Somebody say, I'm not going to go have that goofball yelling at me and for $500 a month. But wait a minute, I'm getting $500 a week, a couple grand. I mean, the job is so underpaid, it's sad to me. And whether it's benefits or not, or it's pay, it needs to come up. And third, go back and take a look at the last few swearing-ins. I mean, I don't know if we call it we need a workshop for it, but there should be a more precise procedure on the swearing-in. It wasn't handled the way all the other ones were. There was more conversation, it was public comment, and then when you went and approved all the different committees, you always open that up before. And, in this day and age, it's very important to open it up. Now, having the workshops, I hope you have a call-in system. It's not that hard. Have people call in instead of being here. Thank you.
All right, okay, since we have scheduled our workshops, I think we're ready for staff comments, unless there's any other issues need to bring up. Start with our manager, Max?
Yes, just wanted to bring to your attention, we have the newspaper we used to have, St. Augustine Beach's News Journal. The former owner has now taken it back under his own ownership, Mr. Logsdon. He came by to see me today. And he's devoting the newspaper totally to our city and in a smaller part of the county like Marsh Creek. Since the Record really doesn't give us much attention anymore. So this will come out each month, and we, of course, will provide news about what activities the commission is doing, as well as other things in the city. And that is my report to you. And I think he mailed this out to every resident this month.
Our city clerk, Beverly?
I have nothing to say, except I'm glad to see everybody safe and healthy. Thank you.
Mr. Tredick?
You probably noticed, the commission probably noticed the charging station that's been installed out there. I want to thank Brian Law for making sure we followed all of our codes.
Being sarcastic.
But it's not activated yet, but it's ready to activate. We're just finishing some of the details on the service agreement with the provider. And once we get that, then that will be activated, and we can have, I'll work with Melinda to have a grand opening or some
Ribbon
such
cutting.
ribbon cutting
Sure.
or something like
That
that.
sounds great. I know several residents have electric cars and will be very happy to hear that that is available.
Yeah, so it's installed, it's ready to go. We just have to get it activated and get the contract, the service contract approved. And I think that can be done at staff level if, didn't we talk, it's like a contract to a cell phone, basically, an app contract. That's really it. Everything else is pretty much in the report. I just wanted to update you on that.
Okay. Mr. Law?
I have nothing additional.
Okay. Any house construction permits? How's everything going along? Any updates on, well, I know you put it all in your report, but any particular updates? What about the property on Second Street that we were, you said an owner took care of that, where we had some code issues?
Oh, the long-standing code enforcement? The permit's been issued for the rehabilitation of that with a structural engineer's report. They have satisfied the code enforcement board's fines. The city has been reimbursed for their legal fees. Everything we've been fined, the rest went to offsetting the building department costs of enforcement over the last 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
Permitting is, we received lots of money in permits last month. We're going to have another very profitable month for the building department for our reserves. And currently the building department is looking into, in conjunction with the finance department, we're looking to automate our timekeeping system as another module of the software we're using. We've requested a demo. The building department is prepared to fund it as it supports building department operations, the initial setup, and then after that it'll be distributed among the departments for budgeting. This is a step to bring the city into the, well, probably somewhere where it should have been a while ago, but now
This is
technology's
a
available.
pilot. You're going to try it first, and then if it really like it, it's going to be rolled out to other administrative departments?
It's actually a module that goes into our admin software, which is
Okay.
finance, building department, transient rentals, business tax receipts, everything.
Okay.
So they have 2 more modules. We're going to do a demo. But we're prepared to make that move, something I thought of this weekend, and we're already acting on it. So you'll see a budget resolution if it satisfies our needs.
Okay.
To transfer out of building department reserve. 3 houses have been, I mean, I keep going. 3 houses have been submitted before the Florida Building Code change, south of the Marriott on the western properties on the 5th Street on the paved road. The applications are considered valid and under the 2017 Building Code with fees paid for zoning. Next month, when you have this meeting, you're going to talk about the building and restructuring. I'm going to present you several options that were discussed last year. And I'm going to show you the amount of money the planning and zoning is now generating this fiscal year already. You're going to be surprised on what we've been working towards to make that department a little more cost-friendly. And like I said, when you see the graphs, you're going to wonder what's been going on. So we're getting there. And I'm going to give you a little brief, if you remember, I spoke in great opposition of the hiring of a planner, just because of the small city. My intent is to give you the exact same speech again, except with the need to develop your own, with the addition of another zoning personnel that's already being groomed to replace Ms. Miller, as she is in the retirement program. The sun is setting on her history here. So,
Okay.
and if you're curious, Embassy Suites is drilling holes in the ground and putting in piles.
Any other commissioners, questions, staff? Chief,
Nothing to add, thank you, ma'am.
how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you.
And the agency, trucking along?
Everything's doing well, we're just continuing to fill a few vacancies. We're almost up to staff now, and we've accomplished our reaccreditation, and we're getting ready to start our policy review next month and going through all of our policies and making sure everything's up to standard with our accreditation, so.
And have all our officers been given their first dose of the vaccine?
All of the officers who wanted to take the vaccine have received it as of this weekend.
Do we have, could you tell me how many or a percentage that were hesitant?
I'd say about 60% did not.
Can you elaborate on their concerns or what's going on?
Well, I think the majority of them have already had the virus,
Okay,
and they have the antibodies. They recommend that if you've had the virus within, 3 to 4 months, you don't take the vaccine. So that was the majority of it.
okay. All right. Our financial director, Patty.
I have no comments.
All right, how's any comments on our 2020 revenue from the state?
So far, everything is trending back where it was originally prior to COVID, which is nice. We just need to keep that strong. I saw some statements over the holiday season that spending for the Christmas season was up some 40-50% over prior year, which was nice. Hopefully those tax revenue dollars will roll into the city of St. Augustine Beach, especially since we had our art walks and a lot of the vendors did very well. So.
Okay. And since our communication director is here, Melinda, any comments?
Just that we had a really good experience with the whole Light at the Beach season. And so far, all the feedback I've received has been positive. I sent out an informal survey to the businesses after the first art walk to ask, did they like it? Would they like to host an artist again? And again, all feedback was positive, and I'm working on a survey to go out this week directly to the artists and to vendors, just again, to get the feedback. Again, so far, everything's been very positive. I think businesses did really well, and the vendors did a lot better than they thought they were going to do. The artists did a lot better than they thought they were going to do. And we actually were faced with not the greatest weather on any of these nights. I don't know what was going on, but it rained at the holiday market. It rained at the first art walk. And then it was freezing cold at the last art walk, but people were out. And, it was good. We had Kilo there, we had the police department there. He was a big hit with everybody. So, it was just overall very, very positive experience, I think, for the community, the businesses. Nothing but people just want more of it.
Very good. Commissioners, any further questions, comments for staff or anything? All right, then I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? We are done. Thank you so much.
That's because I had over half.